A young woman tried to end her relationship peacefully. Minutes later, neighbors heard gunshots and a scream so horrifying they would never forget it.
She even said, I think he's the kind of person that's gonna try to kill me. And he did. And he did. Oh my God.
In another case, two bumbling thieves went out looking for catalytic converters in the middle of the night and ended up leaving a father of 3 dead inside a security truck. What connects these stories isn't just murder. It's how unbelievably fast ordinary nights turned into irreversible tragedy. One bad decision, one pull of a trigger, and multiple lives destroyed forever. At first, nobody around Alyssa Weist realized how dangerous her boyfriend really was. And investigators definitely didn't expect a burglary suspect, named David Hartsock, to accidentally expose himself as a murderer months later. But both cases would soon reveal the same terrifying truth. Some killers don't plan to ruin lives for years. They destroy everything in a single night. On the night of May 17th, 2025, Alyssa Weist thought she was finally ending a relationship that had been emotionally exhausting for months. Instead, it became the last night of her life. Earlier that evening, Alyssa and her boyfriend, Michael Dutkiewicz, had gone out for dinner and drinks with a friend in Pennsylvania. To outsiders, they looked mostly normal. The friend later testified that the couple didn't appear to be fighting, although Michael became noticeably irritated when a bartender failed to hear him right away. At the time, it seemed minor. Just another drunk guy getting annoyed at a bar, but looking back, investigators would later see something else. A man whose anger switched on incredibly fast. And Alyssa already knew that side of him. Friends and family later explained that she had quietly been planning to break up with Michael for months. The relationship had become draining, unpredictable, and increasingly concerning to people around her. Alyssa's siblings reportedly disliked him almost immediately after meeting him. Michael had a reputation, heavy partying, bar fights, reckless behavior, even drag racing. Years earlier, he had already been charged in separate incidents involving destructive and violent conduct. But despite all of that, Alyssa kept delaying the breakup. Partly because she didn't want to create drama during a planned Dominican Republic vacation with Michael's family earlier that month. And that detail makes this story even more heartbreaking, because during that vacation, witnesses said the couple looked happy, affectionate, normal. Meanwhile, Alyssa had already privately decided the relationship was over. She just hadn't told him yet. By the time they returned home from dinner around midnight, Alyssa finally made her decision within roughly 25 minutes. She packed Michael's belongings into a suitcase and placed them outside on the driveway. She wanted him gone immediately, and security footage captured the moment the situation started collapsing. Outside the house, Michael reportedly asked, "Dude, can I get the rest of my things?" Alyssa responded, "You're so dramatic." At first glance, it sounds almost ordinary. Like the kind of tense breakup argument people overhear every day. But what happened next turned a breakup into an execution. After the brief exchange, both went back inside the home. Then Michael did something prosecutors would later describe as devastating evidence of intent. He pulled out his phone and searched Google for how to load and shoot a revolver. Think about that for a second. Not during a robbery, not during a life-threatening emergency, during a breakup. That single search would later destroy almost every argument his defense tried making in court, because, according to investigators, it showed something terrifying. He had time to think, time to stop, and he chose violence anyway. After the search, Michael grabbed Alyssa's .38 caliber Ruger revolver from inside the house and walked upstairs toward the bedroom where she was lying in bed. Then the shooting started. Investigators later said Michael confronted Alyssa with the gun while she was still inside the bedroom. As she got up and tried escaping, he fired twice. One bullet struck the bedroom wall, another ended up near the bottom of the stairs. Alyssa somehow managed to flee the room and sprint downstairs toward the front door. That's when the home's Ring camera captured one of the most horrifying moments in the entire case. Alyssa burst out of the house screaming, barely seconds behind her. Michael followed, but instead of staying on the walkway, investigators say he cut across the lawn to intercept her before she could escape down the street. And then neighbors heard something they would never forget. A scream. Then more gunshots. According to prosecutors, Alyssa was shot in the back while trying to run away. One bullet severed her spine and caused her to collapse face down onto the sidewalk. Then, as she lay helpless on the ground, Michael walked up and fired one final shot into her head. The sheer brutality of that final moment shocked even experienced investigators. Because by that point, this wasn't rage during an argument anymore. It looked like pursuit, like hunting. And later during sentencing, the judge would use language horrifyingly close to that. Immediately after the shooting, Michael fled the neighborhood in his silver Ford F-150 truck with the headlights turned off, while neighbors were waking up in panic and police were racing toward the scene. He was already driving nearly 90 miles away toward his family's shore house in Wildwood, New Jersey. And somehow, the story gets even colder from there, because after arriving, Michael hid the murder weapon inside a toolbox in the garage, then waited. Hours later, around 7 a.m., his mother contacted police on his behalf, claiming her son was in shock and wanted to surrender. That detail stunned many people following the case. Because while Alyssa's family was learning she had been murdered, Michael was reportedly sitting safely at a beach house with his parents and an attorney. By noon that same day, he officially surrendered to police. Investigators quickly recovered the revolver from the toolbox where it had been hidden, and almost immediately, prosecutors believed they had overwhelming evidence. Ring camera footage, gunshot audio, Google searches, ballistics, witnesses, a clear timeline. It was the kind of digital evidence trail killers today often underestimate completely. And Michael's defense team knew it. So during trial, they shifted toward a different strategy. They argued Michael had been intoxicated, emotionally overwhelmed by the breakup, and acting impulsively rather than with calculated intent. Essentially, they wanted the jury to see him as a drunk man who snapped emotionally in the moment. But prosecutors kept returning to the same devastating fact: the Google search. How to load and shoot a revolver. That wasn't panic, that was preparation. And the prosecution argued the moment Michael chased Alyssa outside while armed, the case crossed fully into intentional murder. But while Pennsylvania investigators were building a murder case against a jealous boyfriend, Another case in the same state was unfolding that almost sounded absurd at first, until it turned deadly. In October of 2022, Troy Reichenbach was working what should have been a completely routine overnight security shift in New Morgan, Pennsylvania. It was only his second week on the job. He was training with his brother-in-law, Raphael Yambo, learning patrol procedures at a remote commercial vehicle lot, Kia area. Dark roads, mostly empty at night, the kind of place where hours pass without anything happening. But shortly after midnight, everything changed. While patrolling the lot, Troy and Raphael spotted a suspicious dark-colored van parked nearby. At first, it looked like a possible trespassing situation. Maybe theft, maybe someone hiding. Nothing that seemed immediately deadly. Troy stepped out of the security vehicle, holding a flashlight, and approached the van to investigate. Then he suddenly rushed back toward the truck. He had seen someone inside. Raphael immediately called 911, and while speaking to dispatch, he noticed a man standing just feet away from his driver's side window holding a gun. Then gunfire exploded into the truck. Bullets ripped through the vehicle almost instantly. Raphael was hit in the arm, Troy was struck in the chest, and in the middle of pure chaos, Raphael made a split-second decision that probably saved his life. He dropped between the front seats and pretended to be dead. Moments later, he reportedly heard footsteps approaching the truck, then retreating, then silence. The van sped away into the darkness. When officers arrived, they found Troy still sitting inside the passenger seat. He had been shot through the lungs and aorta. Investigators later said he likely died almost immediately, and just like that, an overnight security shift became a homicide investigation. At first, police had almost nothing. But the killers had made one enormous mistake. Actually, several enormous mistakes, because according to investigators, the men responsible were unbelievably sloppy criminals. At the crime scene, detectives recovered shell casings, bullets, and a broken piece of plastic from the suspect vehicle. Part of a front bumper extension known as an air dam. That tiny fragment became critical. Investigators determined it likely came from a blue Chrysler Town and Country or Dodge Grand Caravan manufactured between 2008 and 2010. But despite releasing suspect information publicly, the case stalled for months. Then, completely unexpectedly, another crime reopened everything. In February 2023, a salon in Pennsylvania owned by a reality TV personality from 90 Day Fiancé, was burglarized during the night, and the surveillance footage looked almost ridiculous. Two men wandered through the salon awkwardly with flashlights, stealing hair products, tools, safes, and equipment, while behaving, according to the salon owner, like Harry and Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber. At one point, the burglars literally stopped to make sure both were wearing gloves. They used trash cans to carry stolen property because they hadn't planned properly. And most unbelievably of all, they parked their van directly in front of a security camera. Police easily captured the license plate. That single mistake led investigators directly to David Hartsock and his brother Richard. When police impounded the van after the burglary arrest, Pennsylvania State Police immediately noticed something shocking. The damaged bumper, perfectly matched the plastic fragment recovered from the murder scene months earlier. Suddenly, investigators realized they weren't dealing with simple burglars anymore. They were looking at a murder suspect. But they still needed the weapon. And incredibly, David Hartsock made another catastrophic mistake. While sitting in jail on the burglary charges, he called his wife, Rebecca Hartsock, and instructed her to hide the gun used in the shooting. Instead, she gave it to police. That moment completely destroyed him legally. Ballistics testing confirmed the handgun matched the bullet that killed Troy Reichenbach. And just like that, months of mystery collapsed almost overnight. But investigators still had one huge question. Why shoot the guards at all? That answer came from another man living with David, Arthur Johnson III. According to Arthur, the two had driven to the lot intending to steal catalytic converters. That was it. Simple theft. But when the guards approached the van, Arthur claimed he leaned back and tried hiding because he didn't want confrontation. David apparently chose something very different. Arthur later told investigators he heard multiple gunshots before David returned to the van and sped away. When they got home, Arthur reportedly became furious after realizing someone had been shot. And honestly, that's one of the strangest parts of the entire case. According to testimony, the murder itself may not even have been planned. Just one reckless criminal making a horrifying split-second decision to eliminate witnesses instead of fleeing. And that single decision destroyed multiple families forever. During trial, prosecutors argued David Hartsock executed Troy simply because he didn't want to get caught stealing car parts. Think about how senseless that really is. A father of 3 killed over catalytic converters. Not revenge, not personal hatred, not some elaborate criminal conspiracy. And perhaps that's what makes cases like this feel especially disturbing, because sometimes lives aren't destroyed by masterminds or serial killers. Sometimes they're destroyed by deeply stupid people making violent decisions in seconds. In February 2026, David Hartsock was convicted of first-degree murder. The following month, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole, along with additional sentences for attempted murder and weapons charges. Meanwhile, Troy's family was left carrying the kind of grief no verdict can erase, especially his twin brother Jason, because losing a sibling is devastating. Losing a twin in sudden violence is something few people can truly imagine. And despite the convictions in both of these cases, the endings still feel tragic in a different way. Alyssa Weist was a brilliant microbiologist whose life ended on a sidewalk. Troy Reichenbach was a father simply trying to build a better future for his children when he crossed paths with desperate criminals in the dark. Two completely different stories, but both share the same terrifying reality. Violence often arrives without warning, one emotional decision, one pull of a trigger, and ordinary lives disappear forever. If these cases shocked you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more real true crime stories that prove reality can be more terrifying than fiction. And let me know in the comments, which case disturbed you more? The jealous rage killing, or the senseless murder during a theft gone wrong?